Hi, and welcome to the history lessons in the Wikipedia world. Last lesson, we discovered what ancient Romans did for entertainment. Today, we're going to look at the buildings where they went to socialize, do sports, relax, or just talk about business. And some of them will surprise you. There'll be the Thermae or Balneae. These are the baths, the public baths. With the public baths, we'll see that there's sometimes a gymnasium. I think this word has no mystery. Gymnasium, a gym. And then we will talk about the latrines, the toilets. Yes. At the end of the lesson, you'll discover why. So let's go and see what were and how they were ancient Roman baths, public baths. These are obviously the Thermae, the public baths. Bathing in ancient Roman times actually played a major role in society. Bathing was one of the most common daily activities in Roman culture and done throughout society and social classes. And although for us it's private, for them it's communal. It was done as a collective, as a society. It does come from Greece, but Romans elevated it to a fine art. When we look at the bathhouses, they just reflect these advancements. For example, a Roman bath would be far more complex than just sweating or putting yourself in the water. You would have the undressing, the bathing in different rooms, the sweating, receiving a massage, resting, all of this in different parts of the building. Also, you had men and women in different areas, but good thing is women could go to the baths too. And we can see how the buildings of the bath, the Thermae, were really complex, as they needed different rooms for everything, and we'll see also structures to control the temperature. Just to see the parts quickly of the public baths, we would have at the start the apoditerium, the changing rooms, palastrae, exercise rooms, nutatio were open-air swimming pools, only for men, obviously, and laconica and sudatoria. They were superheated, dry as saunas. They were to sweat. Then there would be the caldarium. This was the hot room that was heated with a hot water pool and a separate basin on a bit of a stand. Then there was a tepidarium, from tepid, warm room, indirectly heated with a tepid pool. So this one was the one in the middle. We have hot, we have warm, and then we have the last one, frigidarium. This was a cool room, unheated, and it had a cold water basin that actually was normally quite large, and it was in the center of the building. So we have hot, warm and cold rooms. And lastly, it was very common to have massages and health treatments, if you could pay for them, in the public baths. So, what could you find in the Thermae, in the baths? Well, for starters, you need a changing room, because you did not bathe with your clothes on. Here you would get changed and you would have these lockers that you couldn't lock. It's just spaces where you would leave your clothes and everything you were carrying. Wealthy bathers, though, would bring a slave with them that obviously would carry his master's towels, the oils, the strigils, everything that he would need for the bath, and then watched over everything while he was in the baths. So you would have this changing room with the masters leaving all of their things and bits and pieces here, taking what they needed for the bath, and the slaves staying here, waiting, making sure that no one would take his master's clothes or money or whatever he was carrying. Because it has to be said, thieves and pickpockets were known to be quite frequent in the baths, especially in the changing rooms. This changing room, the name comes from the Greek, and it was apoditerium. So it's just the technical Latin words. Obviously, there was also a vestibule, an entrance to the baths, where other servants could be waiting until their masters went in and came out. This was known as the atrium that we'll see. In this area of the atrium, there was just a waiting area, or to go in and go out. It is very curious because in Pompeii there has been we have conserved adverts for theatre, announcements in general, gladiator shows, still in this entrance, just like any other public space today. We have all these papers advertising various services. But well, we had the place where you undressed, and then we went into the frigidarium. The frigidarium is the place where you had the cold water, if you remember. And in some cases, the pool could be large enough to swim in it, but just in some cases. The pictures that we're seeing here today are obviously from Pompeii. This frigidarium, for example, we can, apart that it's all in one piece, wow, we can also see how well decorated it must have been. Time and humidity have taken its toll, but we still maintain colors and some motives. Especially the frigidarium would quite usually be very well painted and decorated all over, as you would sit in the pool and you'd have surrounding beautiful paintings around you. From the frigidarium then, you would go into the tepidarium. Let's remember, first one is cold, this one is warm room. Here, you would start sweating, the sweating process, and not always it would contain water. Sometimes, like the case of Pompeii, it was merely heated warm air at a quite nice temperature in order to prepare the body for the great heat and vapor of the next room. And also, on the return from the hot baths, it would prevent a too sudden transition into the open air. So this tepidarium was a middle point between cold, or the exterior, and the next room that we're going to talk about. Actually, this one was the most highly ornamented room in the baths, as it was merely a room to sit and sometimes be ointed with oils here. In the old baths in Pompeii, the floor is tiles, and the arches were adorned with various stucco and paintings, and the colored ground and the walls were completely red. If you had ointments and oils, this was normally performed by slaves, that it could be your own or just one that actually worked in the baths. And it would be before you went into the hot bath, and then also sometimes after the cold bath, before putting on the clothes in order to prevent the perspiration. And now the big room, the caldarium. Here is the hot room. We can see basins that are made of marble in the old baths in Pompeii. And the caldarium, though, as we've seen with the others that had real beautiful ornaments, here it was quite simple. What happened in the caldarium? Well, here you sat and sweated a lot. Here you would scrape your skin with a strigil. It's a type of stick with a curve that you just pass through all over your skin to take off the old skin and any dirt that you could have. It's a curved metal tool sometimes. Here, attendants in very good places would serve snacks and drinks. And finally, you could dip in the hot bath and enjoy a massage and have oils on your skin. Then when you had enough, you would go into the tepidarium to transition and then back into the cold bath, sometimes going to swim for a bit. And one of the things here is the relaxing part, but also here you would meet up with so many important people of the city. So the baths were actually quite a social place where you socialized and made contacts. Just imagine being naked in different baths and talking to your mayor, the treasurer, someone that had a merchant that had something you needed. These were quite informal and really easy to make the contacts, but it was a social event. It was a social event. Then you would have different services. As we've said, people having snacks and massages, so you could just end up relaxing. This, I think, is a very good way to make business because everyone is so chilled and relaxed. And what can we see now here? Well, this is part of the structure in how they heated the rooms. Because this was, the tepidarium and the caldarium needed technology for this. What you would have was some ovens where you would put in water, especially for the tepidarium if it didn't have any water, and boiling it. You'd have these ovens that would be constantly boiling, and with a structure of sometimes pipes, you would throw the water or the hot air into the rooms. Sometimes they had a false floor, as you see, holding on top of these various structures, and the hot air would go through them and then into the room. You would have also the praefurnium, this is the name for the boilers, the ovens, and the fornacatores, the people in charge of the fire. You would have in Pompeii 3 boilers for the caldarium, the hot water, the tepidarium, tepid water, and the frigidarium, cold water, that would distinguish for the 3 different chambers. The water from the hot air for the caldarium, or especially the tepidarium, would go through a pipe that was inside the wall and underneath the hot chamber, throwing the hot air into the cells. This had to be continuously fed by the fornacatores, and this was obviously a very, very tough job. But it's amazing the technology and how they managed to make really warm saunas in those days. And in quite cold places, still to medieval times, for example, Switzerland, there has been found the same kind of technology to keep houses heated in places where it was really, really cold and dangerous to just live in such cold temperatures permanently. And next to the baths, as we'll see in the structure, there was the gymnasium. Both went quite together. Both were used to socialize and work with the men in the city. Aside from the 3 main rooms, you would have the outdoor gymnasium, where men would engage sometimes in various ball games and exercises. Among other things, there were weights that they lifted, there were discs that they threw. Men would also oil themselves to do sports, because soap was still quite a luxury good and not widely available. So the way to shower and to remove the sweat and the dirt was to oil yourself previously and then remove the excess and the oil with the curved metal tool that we talked about before. This is why during the Olympics, you've probably heard that the ancient Greeks oiled themselves all the time. Not only to look good, that is also a consequence, but for hygiene. And yes, gymnasiums come from ancient Greece and were typically large structures that contained this space, like a stadium, for various sports. Especially if you were preparing for the Olympics, this is where you would go. What we see in the picture is the gymnasium in Pompeii. It could be attached to some public baths, or separate. It depends on the city and the structure of it. But if you had men that were working and being active, this was an important part of society. Couch potatoes were not well viewed. You had to take care of your body. This is a Greek idea that Romans still kept. And let's just have a quick overview, seeing everything that we've talked about. So, you would have the palestra here. This would be the entrance to the big area where you would do sports. Here is the men's zone, the men's area, men's section, and here is the women's section. We see that actually they were quite similar in space. In really small towns, you would actually have timetables. So from one time to another, men could go to the baths, and from one time to another, it was women's time. Still, in some Arabic countries where public baths are still active, you can find things like this. So you would have the dressing room here. Let's remember, we would have the cold room, then we would have the warm room. So you go from the cold to the warm, adapt your body, and then you would go to the hot room where you would spend more time in. Here, just as a curiosity, there's the lavatories, the men's exercise area. You would normally do exercise before bathing, so you'd oil yourself, do lots of exercise, and then end up washing yourself thoroughly. And this is the outdoor men's only swimming pool that was mentioned before. So you have quite an overview of all the bits and pieces and where it would be distributed, how it would be distributed in the baths in Pompeii. This is the case. And just to end the lesson, you might find it quite curious, but I want to mention the latrines, the toilets. For modern people, this sounds quite shocking, because for us it's a private matter going to the toilet. But in ancient Rome, there were public latrines. That was perfectly acceptable. There's many places that you can find large latrines in archaeological sites. Various shapes, sizes, up to 10 seats sometimes, and they could be very well decorated. Here, people would also come and socialize. For us, this is some of the things that change, but for us, it's a completely private matter. For Romans, well, you just went and you sat and you could chat to the guy next to you while you were doing your private things. And they were really well decorated. Hygiene here was also important. You would have flowing water to wash yourself, sometimes with some sponges. And then you would, as you can see here, water basins to wash yourself. So hygiene was high in Roman times, although the sponges, I would not use them personally. And then underneath the latrines, you would also have flowing water. So you have actually some sewage, some serious sewage structure already in place. And with this little curiosity, we end today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next one.